right, and ladies and gentlemen, welcome. This is it. We're finally here. Episode numero uno. Number one, the inception episode of Puck and Roll. I am your host, Patrick Lortie. I am so excited to be here with my distinguished panel of guests. We got Sam Mendehlson with us. We got Elias Laradi, our absolutely incredible insider. We have Joshua Rosa. Maria Bouabdo is joining us on research. Scott Cowan, Sebastian High. You're going to see people. These guys are absolutely incredible, and we are not going to dilly-dally really long because we got so much to talk about. Montreal Canadiens news, Laval Rocket, even some Trois-Rivières Lions news, or Lyon, call it whatever you want, what you would like. I'm actually going to throw the ball directly to Sam, who is going to give his first opinions on what happened in free agency. Sam, what do you got for us, buddy?
Well, first and foremost, Patrick, thanks for setting this all up. This is quite exciting. Numero un, let's stick with the whole French concept.
Numero un, let's do this.
This is a Habs team, guys, that brought in some French players. They got a little scrutiny last year when Danault was out and Drouin was out. Someone who was born in Toronto. I looked at it as, I don't believe that the Habs need a French speaking head coach, but we know that's that's never going to happen, that they don't have someone who speaks French behind the bench. But on the lineup, they addressed something that I guess the fans wanted. I mean, they gave us a Stanley Cup run, but they addressed it first and foremost. There was speculation that David Savard was going to be linked to the Habs, and with all the news, I mean, let's dive down. Let's peel back the onion a little bit. They go to the Stanley Cup, an amazing run. They lose in 5 to Tampa Bay, heartbreaking. We're watching Shea Weber, being surrounded by his teammates, and then a week later, we find out Shea Weber may never play again. So not only is that just a huge blow to Shea Weber, but it's also a huge blow to the Montreal Canadiens organization. So how are they going to address that hole that Shea Weber, not just as a captain, but as a leader on defense, a leader in the locker room? And they go with a guy who's not just from Quebec, as we're sticking with the whole French concept, but a guy who just beat Montreal in the Stanley Cup, and David Savard. And, I really like the term. I really like the contract. And I think, we can all agree on, and everyone's going to have their own opinions on this, but I think we all can agree that there were some guys out there defense-wise that got paid way more than everyone anticipated them getting.
Absolutely.
So I think, when you look at David Savard and what he's going to fill, yeah, it's a huge loss by Shea Weber. Is he going to fill his shoes? Probably not, but it was a good, adequate move by Marc Bergevin, who was obviously under a lot of scrutiny, and we'll probably get to that later at the draft with his first-round pick. But I really thought David Savard was a solid pickup. It addressed that French, another French player on the team. You go right from David Savard into Cedric Paquette. And I think Cedric Paquette, you could call him a poor man's Philip Danault. And I think that's a perfect blanket statement for him. He's not as expensive. Clearly, we saw Danault signing that massive deal to go to the Kings. But he's a guy who's going to come in. I saw, he was being interviewed today. He said he would run through a wall. This is the team he grew up loving. This is a guy who played with Tampa Bay when they first won the Stanley Cup 2 years ago. So another guy that Bergevin, for another year, brings in a couple Stanley Cup winners in Savard, in Paquette. They're really good locker room guys, really good depth guys. But I think the signing that I really was taken aback, maybe the contract was a little too much, but I love what the addition of Mike Hoffman is going to do for the Montreal Canadiens. I think everyone on this panel, in this call, in this podcast would agree with me. The Habs really haven't had a power play since the days of Mark Streit and Sheldon Souray. And if I'm outdating myself, it's because maybe I'm a little bit older than a few of the guys in this room, but this was a power play that back in the day was number one for at least 3-4 years. Andrei Markov, that puck-moving defenseman. And yes,
Sheldon Souray scored something like 20-25 goals one year.
It was
three-quarters of them were
nearly a record, I think, at the time, Patrick. And most of them came on the PP. And that PP's dipped, even with the likes of Shea Weber and Jeff Petrie. They had Dennis Weidman, who, had that unfortunate Uber video come out about him and his teammates, but he was a guy who kind of, took the heat for that, goes to the KHL, and has about 15 to 16 power play points and is the top point producer in the KHL. So another smart, savvy move by Bergevin, but I really like Mike Hoffman. Yes, his defense deficiency, on 5-on-5 is, sometimes a little too much for teams, but this is a guy who, like Cole Caulfield, everywhere he's stepped in, he scored goals. And the Montreal Canadiens with Caulfield and Hoffman, two guys who love to shoot from everywhere, and you get playmakers like Suzuki, and you got Kotkaniemi, and you're going to have other guys that step up as well. I think this is a team that is realizing, hey, we came this short from winning a Stanley Cup. And what do we need to add? A little bit more grit on defense. They do that with the 6'2" David Savard. They need a guy that's going to play that Philip Deneau role. There's Cedric Paquette as your fourth line center. You need a guy who's going to score on the power play. And Mike Hoffman has always done that, whether it was in Ottawa, St. Louis, or Florida. This is a guy in Mike Hoffman who a lot of people thought 4.3 might have been a bit of an overpay for a guy who maybe there wasn't a lot of suitors out there. For me, I think this is a guy that fits in really well with the Habs. The real question, and this is, I guess opening up to everyone, is does that move of Hoffman really affect Jonathan Drouin? Do you move Drouin to center? That's going to be something that time will tell. But I really think that the moves that Bergevin made, he didn't overpay in what was the biggest free agency first day in NHL history. I believe it was like 103 signings. What was the official count after day one?
Over $700 million spent on contracts.
Thanks, Scott. I mean, I was waiting for Maria to chime in with the research there, but I love that you do that off the cuff. And I think that Bergevin knew he had some money to play with, and I thought he used it wisely.
So let me throw the ball directly to Elias, and how about we stick with Mike Hoffman, guys? I don't know about you. Obviously, there was a lot of talk about his character. The fact that, yes, he definitely does have some back-checking deficiencies. This is not a guy who likes to play defense. This is your classic cherry picker who's going to stay on the upper blue line, and he's just going to wait for the pass, and he's going to gun for it. What do you think about the addition of Mike Hoffman? I mean, is he just Thomas Tatar 2.0 at this point, or do you actually think he's actually going to be a welcome addition to this new-looking Canadian squad?
Well, if you're actually comparing him to Thomas Tatar, I think maybe Thomas Tatar was a bit better defensively, but it's not the first time that the Habs have gone after Hoffman. I remember last year they tried to go after him before he signed that 1 year, $8 million deal with St. Louis. At the end of the day, Montreal did this just to get goals. If you want someone to score goals, Mike Hoffman, he's a 20, 25 goal scorer every year average. Honestly, I think it's a good move. It'll back up, in case they do end up losing Tatar, which they will probably lose him. It's an interesting move, and actually he did a media availability today, and he said that, I really want to make sure that I come to Canada. I want to play in Canada. I want to play in Montreal. It's a great team. They have a great group of guys. I'm really looking forward. And again, the contract, I was really surprised, how well it was. The term, the money, it wasn't like an overpayment. So that's my personal take on it.
Yes, there were other options. But there's nothing like playing hockey in Canada, let alone Montreal, being a original six team, and the fans and atmosphere and city. It just has everything that you want as a hockey player to go to a city like that. So I'm really looking forward to the opportunity of playing in the Bell Center in front of all the fans. And then obviously the hockey part of it is, I think they got a great hockey team, some great young talent that's coming up, and I think they're going to be good for a long time. So it was a pretty easy decision for me.
The thing is, though, everyone says that. Everyone comes in and is like, I am so happy to be here, and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, the signature, when David Savard gave his interview, he legit looked like someone who was just thrilled to be here. Then this is a guy, who is like, okay, listen, I bleed red, white, and blue, and I took a lesser contract for that matter, because I don't know about you, because I thought Savard was going to go for over $4 million a year. Turns out he's making Joel Edmondson and Ben Sherratt money, which is actually very complimentary to his style of play, because that's the kind of guy we're going to expect on the right side. Scott, the big question now is, I like David Savard. He's a big dude. He's going to hit like crazy. And now that's all we're going to have, some really, really big guys on the blue line. But to replace Shea Weber, that's what everyone's going to be asking. Is he there to replace Weber, or are we missing something from the bigger picture here?
I think a really important thing to mention about that whole thing with Weber is that Weber was definitely the face of the Canadiens blue line in a lot of ways, and a lot of people saw him as like the main leader on their blue line. And I think with this addition of Savard, they're definitely pushing for more of a cohesiveness and kind of, there's no real guy that stands out, but everyone kind of plays together and plays this really soft game. And a good thing to mention with David Savard is that he's been playing in a culture in Columbus that has been constantly shifting ever since he got there. He got there in 2010, he put up some decent numbers in the QMJHL with the Moncton Wildcats, and then he played with John Tortorella, he played with Scott Arniel when he was head coach. He's bounced around with a bunch of different players. He was there when Vlatko Prospal was their leading scorer, and he was there when Artemi Panarin was their leading scorer. He's played all over the place in that culture, and I feel like he's a player who's kind of used to changing strategies and changing things like that, but he just plays his game, and he plays the same game, and he brings the same things every single night. And it doesn't really matter how things change around him, because his game will just stay the same regardless. So I actually think that he's a perfect fit into Montreal's system, and especially with a guy like Chris Weidman, or Dennis, as Sam had mentioned, but that's just a quick typo. I think there's a really important point to make. I think there's a really important point to make. I think there's a really important point to make about just the Habs offsetting those players really well and having a guy like Weidman who's more of a puck mover, offsetting with a big, hard-hitting, strong guy like Savard.
Sebastian, what's your take on the whole free agency frenzy? Because I know you definitely have a lot to say. And knowing you, I know you've been dying to just jump on this and give us your opinion. Go ahead, buddy.
Yeah, I really liked the Savard signing because we all knew he was going to sign for like 3-4 days before it was made official, and after like Cody Ceci signed for 3.4 million for 4 seasons, I was like, please be under 5 million, because like Bergevin had the money to spend. So I was actually afraid that we were going to lose, that we were going to pay Savard like 5 million or thereabouts money. So 3.5 is really palatable. And as Scott was saying, he's just very consistent, right? Like, he is really solid defensively. Like, his defensive metrics are like significantly better than Sherratt or Edmondson's. And
because he knows what his role is, right? Like,
exactly.
That's how he actually built his name in Columbus. Is that he's just a defensive-minded player. He's just responsible in his zone. He's not the guy, in my personal opinion, who's gonna do the first pass, so to speak. You know, he's just like, you know what, I'm here to protect our goalie and hit everyone in the way, and that's it. Am I correct?
Yeah, and like what I also liked was in his interview today or yesterday. He said like, as soon as I got the offer from Montreal, I accepted. I didn't even look at the amount, because he just wants to be here, right? Like, he genuinely wants to be here. And I think that's also an important addition, because again, like, we've gone through like so many seasons of free agents not wanting to sign here. And now in the last couple of years with Toffoli and now Savard, getting not necessarily like the biggest names available, but like established NHLers, and Toffoli broke out this season, and who actually want to be here, is, I think, a really big thing. And I just wanted to add one more thing on Mike Hoffman. Analytically speaking, he is terrible at 5-on-5. Like he drives nothing.
It's the general consensus that on 5-on-5, he forget it. You know,
I use advanced stats a lot because I respect them a lot. I think like looking at them can give you a much fuller picture, in conjunction with the eye test. But at the same time, Montreal has a whole bunch of play drivers, right? You look around the team, like Lehkonen drives offense, Gallagher drives offense, Toffoli drives offense. All these guys can drive offense. But having someone to purely put the puck in the net is something that we actually need, right? And on the power play, it gives us a really different look, because you can have a power play unit with Cole Caulfield on the left, Mike Hoffman on the right, Toffoli in the bumper, and Nick Suzuki feeding passes with Petrie at the point. Like you have a lot of versatility there, and I think, considering like how difficult the power play has been recently, Mike Hoffman's a really good, smart, and important addition.
Yeah, absolutely. It gives us like a million combinations, you know, that we can use on the power play. Josh, you're actually a big fan of the Cédric Paquette signing, I hear.
Oh, yeah. I think he's going to be pretty great in Montreal, actually. Montreal, of course, loves to roll the 4 lines. They don't have the traditional 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's a really great way for really good third and fourth line players to really shine. And I think Paquette can do that. in the past, Montreal is really good at getting most out of guys that aren't like the best. Like I remembered the Danish Gretzky,
Dale Louise.
Dale Louise, he was like electric in Montreal.